The Stereo-Bargainphile. I am very excited today, you all, to finally bring you part one of my straight-up review of the Elac UB-52s, which is basically a three-way bass reflex design stand mount speaker, or what some of you would call a three-way bookshelf speaker. Now, the Elac UB-52s over here in the United States, they come in at $599 US, and down in my description box below, I will upload Elac's link for you all. But with anything audio or speakers, I would highly recommend for you purchasing that you try to audition them first if you can. But today, we are going to have a lot of fun during part one. I'm going to go over some features, specs, and size and dimensions of the Elac UB-52s. And then I'm going to have a three-way for you all. That's right, we're having a three-way today. A three-way comparison between the Elac UB-52s, the JBL Studio 530s, and the Kef Q100s. That is going to be a lot of fun, you all. And then what I'm going to be comparing against is the different sonic performance characters of each speaker. Now, I wrote a bunch of them down on a piece of paper when I was doing this comparison. But if I don't answer something you want to know a question to, just ask me down in the comment sections. Give me a couple of days and I will reply to your comment. But anyways, I want to just go ahead and jump into this real quick today. But I will tell you I'm going to have a part two straight up review also of the Elac UB-52s, where I'll go over amplifier pairing, which is very important with the Elac UB-52s. And I'm going to take you all for a deeper dive inside of the Elac UB-52's speaker cabinet to give you all a closer look of the turtle bracing, the crossover, and I will give you a close-up look of all the drivers. But that will be in part two, so let's go ahead and jump into the size and dimensions and some specs of the Elac UB-52s. Now, first off, the Elac UB-52s stand about 14 inches tall. It's about 7 inches across, and it's about 11 inches deep. Now, if I was to do that into millimeters, the Elac UB-52s, they stand about 365 millimeters tall. They are about 185 millimeters across and 275 millimeters deep. I just wanted to go over that real quick on both ends. But anyways, this being a relatively small speaker cabinet, the Elac does have some good weight to it. It weighs 18.2 pounds each. So there is some good heft to these stand mount speakers. Now here on the front baffle, you will see that we have three different speakers. Yes, we have a concentric, what they call a concentric driver at the top. But one of the advantages of a three-way design is we actually have a dedicated bass woofer down here on the bottom. And the dedicated bass woofer is a 5 1/4 inch alloy aluminum cone bass woofer. Now above that we have this concentric driver. Now this is the mid-range driver, which is a 4-inch mid-range driver with an alloy aluminum cone also. Now in the middle of that, we have a 1-inch soft dome tweeter. Now the crossover points with the Elac UB-52 is a little bit different than the Elac UB-5. I will go over that real quickly. The crossover point from the bass woofer going to the mid-range driver is 200 Hertz. Now the crossover point from the mid-range driver to the tweeter is 2000 Hertz. That is with the UB-52. But the UB-5, the crossover point from the mid-range driver to the tweeter was actually 2300 Hertz. So now, Andrew Jones got the crossover point from 2000 Hertz, crossing over from the mid-range to the tweeter. So the tweeter is getting a little bit more energy than the previous Elac UB-5. I just thought that was pretty interesting to know. Now the total frequency response of the Elac UB-52s is from 46 Hertz all the way up to 36 kilohertz. And the speaker is rated at 140 watts maximum volume. Elac rated the speaker at 6 ohms and 85 decimals efficiency, which means, yes, these speakers like power. I'm going to tell you all straight up, the Elac UB-52s, I've owned a lot of speakers, you know, that are rated at 95, 96, all the way up to 94 dB efficiency. And these speakers, in my opinion, which I will go over more in part two when I'm talking about amplifier pairing, these speakers do like power. It's more like 83 or 84 decimals efficiency, in my opinion, but I'll go over that a little later on. But if you want that full flesh and body sound out of these Elac UB52s, they do like good power. So now, I'll go over. It comes in a black ash vinyl wrap. All the Elac UB52s do. But they actually did a really good job with the vinyl wrap. I am pretty impressed with that. And then, yes, on the very back, we have our little 5-way binding post. But one thing I wished Elac would have done was used magnetic grills. Yes, they used the old pop-on grills. Here is the actual grill for the Elac UB52. I mean, it's not a bad looking grill, but come on, Elac. You all could have put some magnetic grills on there. But anyways, especially in 2021. But anyways, let's go ahead now and get straight into this comparison. Now, one thing I'm going to do a little bit different with this comparison, you all, is after I have the comparison, I'm going to go to each one of the speakers and give you all my subjective, humble opinion of its overall sound character, its pros, and also its cons. I thought that would be a lot of fun. And at the end of the video, I will wrap that up with saving the Elac UB52s for last. So now, let's go ahead and get into the comparison of all three speakers. So basically, in different categories, I have first, second, and third place. And I want to run through this very quickly with y'all because I do not want this to be a long video. So first, let's talk about soundstage. When I talk about soundstage, the first thing I want to talk about is the width. How wide the soundstage is with each speaker. Which one's the widest, which one isn't the widest. And when it came to width in the soundstage, I gave the JBL Studio 530 first place. Now, second place was actually about a tie between the KEF Q100s and the Elac UB52s. Now, when it came to height or that vertical soundstage, how high the soundstage sounds, I gave first place to the Elac UB52s, second place to the JBL Studio 530s, and third place to the KEF Q100s. Now, 3D holographic imaging. Now, one thing I needed to tell you all, I forgot to tell you this at the beginning, I used two different rooms to compare these three speakers against each other. One is my near field room, which is 12 foot wide by 26 foot long, but I have everything up close together. That is my near field room, and also my small living room. My small living room, I think it's something like a 16 by 24. I just wanted to go ahead and get that out there because all three of these speakers, in my opinion, perform their best in a near field environment. So now let's talk about 3D holographic imaging. Which one of these speakers had the best 3D holographic imaging? First place with 3D holographic imaging, I gave to the KEF Q100. Second place, the Elac UB52s. And third place, the JBL Studio 530s. Now, when it comes to instrument separation, how much space is in between all the instruments and the actual artist of the playback that you are listening to. Now, instrument separation, first place, the Elac UB52s take the win. Second place, KEF Q100. Third place, JBL Studio 530s. Now, let's talk about airiness throughout the soundstage, meaning sound projected out into the room that seems not to come from the speaker's location. What us audiophiles call the speaker disappearing. That is airiness, my friend. In first place for airiness, which was kind of surprising, the speaker that disappeared the best, in my opinion, was the Elac UB52s, with the KEF Q100s coming in second place, and third place, the JBL Studio 530s. Now, when it comes to tonality and texture, comparing these three speakers against you all, there was I really couldn't call it a winner, because with tonality and texture, it really came down to what instrument was playing on what speaker. one speaker didn't play all the instruments the best. With like the JBL Studio 530, brass air instruments like trumpet and saxophone sounded great with the JBL Studio 530s. Then over here with the KEF Q100, instruments like cymbals, flute, and piano, in my opinion, sounded better with the KEF Q100s. And the Elac UB52 was like the groundskeeper. There wasn't one instrument that really stuck out that it played the best. It had a good medium overall. So there's really not no winner in texture and tonality. It's really going to come down to what instrument you listen to mostly. But I will say, I do like electric guitar a lot with the KEF Q100, and that bass kick drum sounds really good with the JBL Studio 530. But anyways, there was no clear winner. Now let's talk about decay, the fade of notes out into the room. That's decay, my friends. First place, when it comes to decay, I gave it to the KEF Q100s. Second place, let me see here. Second place, I gave to the JBL Studio 530s. And third place to the Elac UB52s when it comes to decay. Now, dynamics. Now, when it comes to dynamics, I gave first place to the JBL Studio 530s. And then I gave second place to the KEF Q100s. And third place to the Elac UB52s. Now, when it comes to clarity and detail refinement, first place I gave to the KEF Q100s. Second place to the Elac UB52s. And third place I gave to the JBL Studio 530. Now I was going to put center imaging in there, but that's really going to depend on your room and how you tilt your speakers in. I will tell you this, when it comes to center imaging, the JBL Studio 530s, if you tilt them in just right to your listening position, whoa mama, they got some good center imaging. It is like direct. But anyways, I just kind of left that out because that depends on your room entirely and how you tilt your speakers in. So now I want to talk about strong low-end bass. How robust is the bass, sturdy, how tight that low-end bass is. But I didn't want to judge low-end bass at one volume. I want to judge it at low volumes, medium volumes, and actually high volumes. Now, medium volumes is moderate listening levels. Now, when it comes to low volume listening levels, the low-end bass, first place, of course, the JBL Studio 530 takes it. But when it comes to low-end bass, the strength overall between the Elac UB52s and the KEF Q100s at low volumes, I give second place to the KEF Q100s and third place to the Elac UB52s. Now, when we get up to moderate listening volume levels, with how strong that low-end bass is, then yes, at moderate levels, the JBL Studio 530 still has the strongest bass. But now at moderate levels, between the Elac UB52s and the KEF Q100s, it is about a tie. Now we get up to louder listening volumes. How strong is that low-end bass at louder volumes? Well, first place again is the JBL Studio 530. If you haven't guessed it yet, the JBL Studio 530s have very good bass. But second place at loud volumes, I actually gave it to the Elac UB52s. Because at that loud volumes, it can still maintain its composure. Where the Elac UB52s, once I get it up to that louder volume, yeah, it starts to get a little congested and smears up just a little bit in the bass. But that just goes to show you at these different listening volumes. I do wish the Elac UB52s at low listening volumes, I do wish there was more bass, but I think if it did, this would take away from the contrast of the Elac UB52s being so well balanced. So now, let's get into the mid-range. All three of these mid-ranges are completely different. There is no winner at all. The mid-range of the KEF Q100, to me, compared to the Elac and the JBL, I would call somewhat neutral. No, I don't know what complete neutral is, because I would have to be in the studio actually listen to the mix. But in comparison, like the Elac UB52s, they have just a little bit of warmth to them. Now the JBL Studio 530s, Yes, they are on the warm side. A little bit warmer than the Elacs, and the Elacs are a little bit warmer than the Kef Q100s. Now, which one has the best male vocals? When it comes to male vocals, first place, hand down, I gave it to the Elac UB52s. Second place male vocals, I gave it to the Kef Q100s. Now, third place with male vocals, the JBL Studio 530s. But now we talk about female vocals. When it comes to female vocals, I gave first place to the Kef Q100, and second place was a tie with female vocals between the Elac UB52 and the JBL Studio 530. It was very close. I almost gave it to the Elac UB52s. I guess if I had to, yeah, I would go with the Elac UB52s. The male vocals on the actual JBL Studio 530 can sound a little bit heavy and a little bit chesty. Now, let's just talk about the top end. All three of these have different top ends, and there's no winner. The Kef Q100 has a lively and very revealing sounding speaker, meaning the Kef isn't going to cover up a bad recording. Now, the Elac UB52's top end is what I would call relaxed. It is nice and easy and soft and gentle. It is not overly aggressive at all. Now, when I first got these speakers, they really wasn't to my taste at all, you all, because I normally go for speakers that have that forward presentation. But after about 15 to 20 hours of break-in time with the Elac UB52s, you know, at the first, they sounded boring and dull up top. They started having a little bit more life once it started breaking in. And one thing I could tell with the Elac UB52s, it's a very balanced overall sound character. But I did start liking the Elac UB52s more and more, even though the speaker isn't normally to my taste. I know some people will say that the speaker sounds dark. I wouldn't call it sounding dark as much as I would call it sounding relaxed. Okay, so that pretty much wraps up the comparison altogether, and as you all could see, every speaker actually held its own. It just depends on the sound that you like. You know, I know even though that the Elac UB52s aren't to my taste, that doesn't matter at all. What matters is what you all like. That is what matters, and my job as a reviewer is to try to bring you all a review that has real value to it. So now to wrap this up, I'm going to go over the overall sound characters of the JBL Studio 530s, the Kef Q100s, and I will wrap it up with me going over the complete sound character of the Elac UB52s. I will talk about the pros and the cons. I'm going to pause it real quick and we'll get into that. Okay, like I said I would do for you all, I actually had a subscriber said, TJ, after you have your comparison of the Elac UB52 versus the Kef Q100 versus the JBL Studio 530, would you please go over each of the speakers' total sound character in your humble opinion? I said, well, this is going to make the video long, but I will do it anyways. And I will start out with the JBL Studio 530, and then I will real quickly talk about the Kef Q100, and to wrap it up, yes, of course, the Elac UB52. But now let's start out with the JBL Studio 530. Now basically the JBL Studio 530 is rated at 6 ohms and 86 dB efficiency. Has a frequency response from 45 Hz all the way up to 40 kilohertz. So now let's get into it. The JBL Studio 530s are a two-way stand mount speaker that's a horn-loaded design. The JBL has a 1-inch compression driver as a tweeter, and the mid-range driver is 5¼ inch cellulose cone with polyplast laminate over the front cone. Basically meaning it is a paper cone that has like a laminate plastic coating over top of it. First off, the JBL Studio 530 has a forward presentation, but the top end isn't overly lively or overly shouty sounding like other horn-loaded designs around the JBL's same price point. Most other designs use a metal dome tweeter, But with the JBL using a compression driver as a tweeter, well, the JBL isn't the most revealing sounding speaker, but overall clarity and details are good but not great. Now the mid-range has a little warmth overall. Instrument separation is okay. Texture and tonality is good. Female vocals are very good, but male vocals can sound a little chesty on some recordings. Not saying male vocals sound bad. It's just male vocals are good, but female vocals are very good. And as far as dynamics go, yeah, the JBL has outstanding dynamics. But one of the JBL 530's strongest point has to be the center imaging. The JBL center imaging can be amazing and always at least very good. And once you start tilting the JBLs in off axis up to 15 degrees, geez, you all, outstanding center imaging. It's direct. But another strong point of the JBL is the fullness of the low-end bass, especially for the JBL's size of a 5 1/4 inch mid-range driver. And yes, I'm talking about from a desktop to a small room environment. Now, some of the caveats with the JBL Studio 530s would be on complex recordings. They can sound a little congested. Instrument separation isn't the best, and male vocals can sound heavy or chesty. And the JBLs aren't as revealing sounding as others in their price category. But one thing I will tell you all about the JBL Studio 530s is I do love this speaker a lot. It has very good bass, again, from a desktop to a near field room, even to a small room if you're going to use powered subwoofers. That one of the amazing things about the JBL Studio 530 is here recently, I have seen the prices of them drop all the way down from Harman International at $299 US. So now let's jump into the KEF Q100's overall sound character. Okay, now for the overall sound character of the KEF Q100. Now, I need to make this very quick, y'all. Now, basically, the KEF Q100 is a two-way coaxial design with an aluminum driver and an aluminum tweeter. A 5 1/4 inch driver and a 1 inch aluminum tweeter. Now, the overall frequency response of the KEF Q100 goes down to 49 Hz up to 40 kilohertz and rated at 86 dB. So now let's go ahead and jump into the KEF Q100. Yes, the KEF Q100 does have a forward presentation. The KEF is a very revealing sounding speaker, meaning the KEF isn't going to cover up a bad recording, and equipment matching is very important. But once you have the right equipment or front end and great recordings, oh my, the KEF is going to reward you with outstanding clarity and detail refinement. But the KEF's strongest sound character has to be the KEF's ability to reproduce that 3D holographic imaging that can be downright amazing. I've even heard some people say downright scary. The KEF has a lively top end, which helps to reproduce good air throughout the soundstage. The low-end bass is also impressive up to moderately loud listening levels from a desktop to a small room. In-room bass response, my near-field room that's 26 foot long by 12 foot wide, I can get the speakers down to about 47, 48 Hertz, which is pretty impressive. That is in-room bass. The KEFs have stern bass for their size. Mid-range is clean with the tad very little bit of warmth to it. I would almost call it neutral. Vocals are good overall, but I would recommend good to great recordings, and I would recommend a muscular amplifier on the warm side of neutral for the KEF Q100s. Some quick caveats of the KEFs: they can sound edgy, bright, metallic, and also they can have a ringing effect. The KEFs won't be for everyone, but there are people who love that British KEF sound, including myself. One thing about the KEF speaker is it's very focused, meaning a strong, precise sense of image projection. And that is one thing that I love about the speaker. Now let's wrap it up with the Elac UB52. Okay, to wrap this review up, I'm going to go over the overall sound character, in my opinion, of the Elac UB52s, which are basically a three-way design. The three-way design, we do have the concentric driver. We have the 4-inch mid-range driver, a 1-inch soft dome tweeter, and a 5 1/4-inch woofer. So here goes. The Elac UB52s to me have a nice and easy and soft presentation that's very well balanced. Overall, I would call this relaxed and non-aggressive and very easy on the human ears, especially for someone who gets fatigued easily from bright sounding speakers. I would almost call the Elacs dry sounding or dull sounding compared to speakers that are very revealing sounding. But the Elacs still have very good clarity in detail retrieval. Instruments, texture, and tonality is surprisingly good to be using out of aluminum drivers. The vocals, male and female, are above average at its price point, especially the male vocals. Now the dynamics with the Elacs are okay, but not the best in class. Actually, the micro details are outstanding with the Elacs and soundstage when it comes to locations or placement of the singer and instruments are outstanding as well. There is plenty of there is plenty of air in between the artists and the instruments. Basically, the Elac UB52s have great localization. The overall low, mids, and highs are very well balanced. One doesn't overshadow the other. The bass at low volumes is okay, but the bass is much better once you start to get to moderate volumes. Now the top end to me of the Elac UB52 is relaxed sounding or nice and easy and soft sounding. It's more of that gentle kind of speaker. Now one thing I really enjoyed about the Elac UB52s is how well they played back on my 70s rock and roll music. They can sound a little bit edgy, a little bit metallic, a little bit grainy. The Elac UB52s done a great job. The only caveats I had with the Elacs is some would call this speaker boring or dull because the Elac isn't the most revealing speaker for the price point. Dynamics could be better, low-end bass could be stronger at low volumes, but with bigger amplifiers, this isn't as apparent. But this also may throw off the contrast of the Elacs sounding so balanced sounding. So that pretty much wraps it up for me until I have part 2, you all. Until next time, this is TJ, the Stereo-Bargainphile.